Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism, the friendliest anarchist you will ever meet. And before I jump into the show topics that I have for today, got a couple of announcements, kind of. More an opening rant, but not really a rant. Just, I feel like talking about things. So I'm going to talk about things because that's kind of what I do, right? Well, as you may or may not know, and I feel like I always have to say that because, some people might stumble on the show, and I'm not going to presume that they've listened to every episode. Or maybe you are a regular listener, but you missed something at some point along the way. So you may or may not be aware that I ran a half marathon on Saturday, and it was the second one that I've ever done, and I did so well that I went ahead and signed up for a third one that's in the fall sometime. I forget exactly when it is, but it's coming up in the fall at some point. And, so what I did on Saturday, actually Friday after I got done recording the show, I did a brief run around the neighborhood as sort of, final warm-up preparation sort of thing. And then I went to bed. And I didn't sleep that well because, I'm not normally going to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but I did on Friday. And I slept for a couple hours, and then I kind of woke up and was I can't fall back asleep. And so I goofed around online for a little bit, and then I was able to kind of get something that resembled sleep a little bit, and then I woke up at midnight, and then I got some work done before hitting the road just before 2 o'clock, get to Portland about 5-ish, I think, got a nice parking spot right across the street from where the race began and ended, and wound up taking a very brief nap. And then the race began at 7:03 because I was in the second wave. The first wave of really super fast people started at 7. And the wave for the people that not so fast started at 7:03. So I start running. And I had a plan in mind of, here's sort of the run walk intervals that I'm going to do. And, that just sort of got thrown way out the window. And somewhere around the mile 3 mark, which is where I had planned on doing sort of the first, walk interval, we were going up a kind of hill and was like, I'm just going to go ahead and walk very briefly. And then, start running again to maybe, that next water station up there somewhere. And it turns out that I wound up running 90% of this thing, where my initial plan was, maybe 75%-ish. So ran about 90%, which is very good, especially considering the fact that until recently I was not a runner. And I wound up besting. I predicted that I would finish in 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 43 seconds. Wound up finishing in 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 11 seconds. Meaning that I bested my prediction by 10 minutes and 32 seconds. And because I did such, I wound up making a donation to the Ross Ulbricht Defense Fund equal to 3 cents per second. And because, there's 60 seconds in a minute, that's 632 seconds times 3 cents, wound up being just under $19 that I donated. And somebody on Facebook said that they would match. They're actually going to come into the town where I live sometime later this week. They'll give me the funds. I went ahead, I made a Bitcoin donation. And there was also the wrestling pay-per-view that happened last night, Sunday. WWE's Great Balls of Fire. Absolutely a horrible name for a wrestling pay-per-view. But anyway, I made predictions and wound up saying that I'll donate $1 for each incorrect prediction. I missed 3 of the matches, so made an additional $3 donation. And what I did, I went to art.freeross and then made the donation revealing some blocks of that picture. Again, that is art.freeross.org. And again, as you click on little boxes and make a donation, it reveals parts of the picture that Ross Ulbricht wound up drawing while he was incarcerated, and he still is incarcerated, and there's questions about where he is right now. It was revealed a couple days ago that he was moved without the family being notified that such was happening. And when I was just recently on the website, they still have the mailing address for where he used to be. So hopefully they wind up figuring out exactly where Ross is, because I know his family wants to go see him, and there are people that want to send him things in the mail. And yeah, it's just overall not a good situation right now for the Ulbricht family. So that is sort of the opening rant announcement, sort of, Darryl just sort of rambling about what he wants to ramble about. Now, I could talk at length about the wrestling pay-per-view last night, but I'm not going to, because that's not why you're tuning in. This is not a wrestling podcast. And as I mentioned on Friday, I probably should have one, but I don't, because I don't know when I would do it on a regular basis. Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Before I jump into the show topics, I've got a question for you. Are you an advocate for free market money? Do you use Bitcoin as an alternative to the fiat-centric stuff floating around in the world? If so, then you need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. Spend-A-Bit is the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Last time I looked, it's over 3 million products. You can find them all at spendabit.fppradio.com. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a bit. And I know you might be thinking, but the fees are so high. Well, the fees are actually coming down. The fees are back to normal-ish for Bitcoin. Spend a bit. Spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. Spendabit.fppradio.com. Now, you probably are aware, unless you're new to America, you're new to the English language, you are aware that last week was the American Independence Day, the 4th of July. And there's a lot of people that they celebrate by blowing stuff up and barbecuing stuff and telling people Happy 4th, but they don't really know what they're necessarily celebrating. Now, I could go off on a big, huge, long rant about that, but I'm not going to. I stumbled across an article earlier today that is titled, What If We Keep Celebrating or Declaring Our Independence Even Though the 4th is Over? And it's not what you necessarily think. This is not about political independence. The article begins, True, the long Happy Birthday America weekend of parties and parades and hamburgers is officially over until next year. But it has me wondering, what could change in America for the better before next summer if we keep giving our hearts and consideration to how this thing first got started? The day, July 4th, 1776, when that parchment was unanimously signed by 13 states beginning with these lines, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I'm not going to get off on too far of a tangent that the parchment wasn't actually signed on July 4th. It was voted on. It was, agreed upon on 4th of July. But most of the signatories did not sign until later in the year, probably about a month later is what most people believe. But I digress and continue. They say, boom! And no, that was not a firecracker. That was the light that first ignited the American dream for all men and women. So what if moving ahead, instead of focusing just on the news and the rights we fear losing, we also tune into the good news within ourselves? That in America, and I'm going to definitely stop here and say that your rights are not dependent upon what piece of land you live on. You, as a human being, or a sentient being, if you're somehow not a human, but you're sentient enough to listen to what I'm saying and understand these words, you have rights that exist regardless of where on this planet you live. Now, the difference is whether or not the governing entity that claims a monopoly over force over that geographic area recognizes those rights. And I guess in theory, even if you're not on this planet, if you're somewhere else, you still have rights because of the fact that you are a conscious sentient being. But I digress and continue. The author says, we have these inalienable rights that can't be restrained or repealed by human law. What if, as America begins our 232nd trip around the sun, we're being called loudly now to use those universal rights or to lose them? Not to England or to our own government, but to the thoughts that we individually choose daily and perhaps addictively to give most of our bandwidth. What are those rights our founders assumed? we come bundled with by birth by our Creator that can't be taken away unless we just give them away. Here's a few on my list. And now, as I read the list, I will definitely stop to wind up giving further thoughts to what is included and possibly what is excluded. Here, the right to not be ashamed of myself for anything or any reason. Now, there are going to be some people that might wind up saying, well, you should be ashamed because fill in the blank reason. But at the same time, people are told to love themselves the way they are. So which is it? Am I to love myself the way I am, or am I to be ashamed of myself because I don't fit a perfect societal standard? Well, maybe that's something that you personally and me personally need to declare independence from, is the whole concept of, needing to fit some idealized sort of, here's an airbrush picture of a model on the cover of a magazine. You've got to look exactly like this, even though the person in the picture doesn't look exactly like this, because, see, we had to airbrush it, but it doesn't matter. We're showing you what you have to look like, even though the person in the picture doesn't look like what we're saying you have to look like. Next on the list, to practice both a street-smart mind and a beginner's mind. Now, I'm not entirely sure what they mean here, but seems to me that, yes, you should be knowledgeable about what's going on, but also at the same time remain curious and always want to learn. Maybe? Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values, which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com.
Hi, this is Davi Barker from ShinyBadges.com, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I continue going through the list here of rights that you have. Some of the rights that you, as a sentient, conscious being, have regardless of where you live. And the reason I'm talking about this, again, the Independence Day, the American Independence Day was last week. Article that I stumbled across said, what if we keep declaring our independence even though the 4th is over? And this is talking about declaring independence not from a government. I wish it was going there, but independence from, outside expectations. The independence that you have these rights. And what are some of the rights that you have that you are endowed by your Creator with? Well, the author of this article has a list, and I'm sharing it. So here are a few more. To show dignity for everyone you meet, even if they don't seem to deserve it. Because ultimately, I'm always just meeting myself. To trust a miracle when I know one, and beware a monster when I see one. To love who you please because you choose to, and attach with love because you need to. I'll read that one again in slightly different terms. You, as a sentient being, whether you're human or, maybe there's some alien species somewhere. I don't think there is, but you never know. You have a right to, love who you want to love. Now, that's not to say that they're necessarily going to reciprocate that love, but you definitely have the right to, feel emotions towards who you want to feel emotions to. And you also have a right to end relationships with people. So, just because you got into a relationship with somebody and you said, I'm going to love you forever, things sometimes change and you don't love that person forever, and that's okay. You can always end that. Like, you're not forced to continue loving somebody that you don't want to love anymore. You also have the right as a sentient being to give up on complaining, and friends who can't stop complaining. So you've got a friend that needs an ear. Yeah, you're within your rights to be there for your friend. And your friend has the right to be there for you, but at the same time, you each have the right to tell the other person, hey, just knock it off. Now, that doesn't mean that everything, I'm so glad you said knock it off, and now everything's perfect. That's not what that means. I continue. The author here, again, on the list of things that you have the right to do, to not be with or against a political party, but for principles worth empowering. Period. To give only for the sake of giving and not for the expectation of a return. To skip down the street holding your daughter's hand. To know that Susan B. Anthony knew what she was talking about when she said happiness is freedom. And there's a saying, I forget the exact wording, so I will paraphrase here. Something along the lines of being happy is an act of rebellion when, like, society tells you you're not supposed to be, or something. I think it's more along the lines of loving yourself is an act of rebellion in a society trying to sell you all kinds of, stuff to make you whatever. Again, it's been a while since I've seen the thing, but it's a meme that floats around on the interwebs, and you probably have seen it and probably know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, otherwise I just sound like a rambling crazy person, which, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But, again, continuing here with some of the rights, these inalienable rights that you have, regardless of where on this planet or outside of this planet, if space colonization ever comes about, like, your rights don't cease to exist because, you're not living on Earth anymore, ha ha ha. You have the right to fight for your freedom and to step out of your comfort zone to higher ground just because you can. You have the right to love and value and use your imagination and your intuition. You have a right to be an inspiration. You have a right to believe more in science than in superstition. You have a right to express yourself and the gifts you came with. You have a right to cut out the judging, comparing, or otherwise holding those gifts from yourself or from others. You have a right to give up on being dismissive, divisive, or downright skeptical that we are doomed. And they're using the word doomed here in air quotes because there's always, and this seems to be sort of a recurring theme in humanity, there's always something that, this is going to kill us all. Fill in the blank is going to kill us all. And over my lifetime, that's changed. That blank has changed several times. Global cooling is going to kill everybody. Or at least that's what it was when I was young. And then it turned into the Russians. Or actually, I think it was the Russians and global cooling at the same time. And then, like the Chinese are going to kill everybody. And then Al-Qaeda. And then, the terrorists. Just whoever the terrorists are. And now it seems to be the Russians and global warming and something. And no, you don't have to be scared about things killing you. Stay tuned. There's more.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Going through a list here of some inalienable rights that the author of an article over at archetypes.com says that, here are some of the inalienable rights that you have. Certainly the Declaration of Independence mentions that you have the inalienable right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But, let's sort of break that down a little bit. And that's what they're doing here. And as always, the link will be in the show notes. But I'm going through the list here and then sort of giving my input on the various things that are written. You have a right to keep learning simply because it keeps your brain healthy and happy. Now, there are a lot of people that think, oh, well, I'm not in school anymore. I don't need to learn nothing. Well, no, that's not true. Like, if you're not learning something almost every day, then you're probably not doing life right. I'll just leave it at that and continue. You have a right to feel lighter and joyful, especially for no reason, or rather for no reason you can see with your eyes. You have a right to have a voice. You have a right to exercise your freedom to take a day to binge watch Netflix if you want to. Now, this is assuming that you have Netflix, but the point still stands. Like, you have a right to, not always be working, Darryl. You have that right. Like, you can take a day off to where you're not constantly doing something. And even though, I definitely took some time off from work on Saturday to run that half marathon, I was still doing something. Like, I could not tell you the last time that I just lounged around all day and wasn't doing something. I continue. You have the right to agree or disagree with Julia Child's quote, life itself is the proper binge. In which case, the author says, make mine a hot dog and a lobster roll. And speaking of lobster rolls, I can't believe that I was in Maine over the weekend and did not have a lobster roll. I honestly can't tell you the last time I had a lobster roll, but I was in Maine over the weekend and did not have lobster. That needs to be remedied. Hey, don't forget, every Friday I answer your questions. Send those over using the contact form ama.fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.